You get down below that level, you talk about the number of fundamental particles of matter, and science says, well, we know right now that there are more than 200 fundamental particles. We're not sure how many more, and experiments keep turning up more and more. Many of these particles exist for only a billionth of a second, and trying to detect them is pretty difficult. But the Dogon come out and say, they don't waffle at all. The Dogon say there are 266 particles. And I said, okay, well, that's certainly in the ballpark of what science says. It's certainly a credible number given all the other symbols the Dogon have. You get down below that, and science says that these particles are the result of vibrations of cosmic strings, which are the foundation of string theory, which is really an unproven theory right now, but the best candidate we have for how matter is actually formed. The reason that it's unproven is because we just can't examine anything that is so very small as a cosmic string. Possibly over the course of the next 15 or 20 years, technology will catch up to the point where they can actually see what these things look like. But the Dogon produce a drawing, very similar to the other drawings they do, of what these cosmic strings look like. Science says they're loops. The Dogon describe them actually as coils. They look very much like a loop, but you see the details and you realize that it's actually coiled. And that brings us back to all the spiral and coil references in the earlier myths. The vibrations of these, the varying kinds of vibrations of these quantum or cosmic strings result in what we see as all the forces and all the particles of matter. At this point, you have to switch from Stephen Hawking to Brian Greene for a discussion of string theory that is presentable at the level of a user like me, a person who is not highly scientific. Brian Greene presents in his book several different diagrams of typical vibrational patterns of these cosmic strings, and one of those matches up with what the Dogon say a cosmic string looks like. If you follow back through the Dogon symbols, you realize they're taking the most obvious representation of each of these symbols and trying to present it as an example. It's not the only example, but it's the quintessential one. So now you've got an equivalence between the vibration of a quantum string and this drawing that the Dogon do, which is actually a drawing they do, a field drawing they do. They draw with sticks in the field at a certain time in their agricultural cycle and produce this image that is very much like the vibrational pattern of a quantum string.
A rumor arose that the Dogon themselves acquired this knowledge from ancient Egypt, or in any event, that there was a connection between the Dogon cosmology and mythology and the Egyptian. So Scranton started looking for those connections and found them very, very quickly.
The connection to Neith. Neith is the mother goddess in ancient Egypt. She's the one who, from the earliest references in ancient Egypt, was said to be responsible for the creation of matter. She was said to have woven it on her shuttle, or with her shuttle. And the weaving references tie back to the Dogon weaving references. They say that there's a spider who weaves matter. Their spider is called Dada, and Dada in the Dogon language means mother. So you've got a link between the mother Neith and the mother spider, Dada. When you get to Neith, in order to understand what Neith's about, you really have to look at the glyphs that make up her Egyptian hieroglyphic name. There are many different ways of spelling the word Neith, and it looks to me like some of the symbols evolved over time, so that what started out in one form ended up in a slightly different form later in Egypt. Her name is written with the complex way that quantum strings intersect themselves. Those two symbols come from the words to weave. One is written with a symbol which is exactly one of the simple ways that quantum strings intersect themselves. The other spelling is written with another symbol that is exactly one of the ways quantum strings intersect themselves. So you've got three very precise representations of quantum string diagrams or string theory diagrams used to write the name of Neith and how she forms matter. It's pretty much a no-brainer that we've got a connection here. Serpents and clay pots are fundamental symbols of many mythologies around the world. And part of the surface line of these mythologies is it's playing a game with you, a lot like the TV show Password. They're trying to get you to say another word back. And so when they're presenting you with spiraling coil, spiraling coil, spiraling coil, or serpent, 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 and clay pot, clay pot, clay pot, they're trying to get you to say waves and particles. And as soon as you said waves and particles, then you're on the track of where you want to go to find the answer. I resisted saying waves and particles. I consciously resisted saying waves and particles for a number of years during my research because I just didn't believe that a myth could be taking me there. I didn't believe that it could be leading me down the path of quantum and string theory. So you have to understand that each one of these symbols has multiple meanings depending on which storyline you're thinking about. And so they can take slightly altered forms depending on which storyline you're in. The symbol of Alma's egg, when you're talking about the storyline of the structure of matter, looks almost exactly like what Stephen Hawking presents as a diagram of a black hole, which is the closest thing we've got right now to what the unformed universe might have looked like. When you go to the reproductive side, Alma's egg takes more the shape of a womb, and so it's more rounded. It also connects to the symbol of the step pyramid and the pyramid, which can take two forms, a flat top and a peaked form. And so depending on which of these lines of symbolism you're discussing, the same symbol can have a slightly different shape. I think I came across some of the genetic reproduction symbols first, but because the structure of matter symbols had so much more depth to them, you could make a much stronger argument that they were talking about what you said, following that path and following the reproductive path. I know that there are other researchers who have been actively trying to connect symbols of myth to details of reproduction, but there's not enough. You have to get it to be believable. You have to get it down to what I call self-evident comparisons between two things. The Chinese were right when they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you can get it down to where two things are self-evidently the same, it makes it much harder for somebody to argue with you that you're wrong. So from the structure of matter side, I could get to that point over and over and over again. Whereas on the reproduction side, you had to depend more on descriptions and less on drawings, and so it's not as strong an argument.